Hello. No one expected Kotoshoho's dream of a July, but will someone wake him up before September ends? Saltro!
Roll the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome to the Dohyo here on Mr. JWags channel. We are back recapping an utterly shocking July basho. But first, I'd like to give a shout out to our patrons. Thank you so much. Your support means everything to the channel. I love you most of all. And please, if there are any member perks that you have been promised either through the Patreon or through the initial Kickstarter we did a few years ago that you have not received, please reach out to me at mrjwagschannel@gmail.com. I want to make this right. Reach out, please. And again, thank you all so much for supporting the channel. It really does help. Okay, so this July basho. Now, to be fair, I did say that the Yusho was going to go to a wrestler with a long tenure in Makuuchi with recent injury troubles, and they would win with a 13-2. I just didn't expect it to be this Rikishi. So yeah, drop it.
JWags was wrong.
Yes, Kotoshoho wins his very first Yusho with a 13-2, also ended up with a Shukun Show Outstanding Performance Prize, his second Kanto show, his first Kinboshi, and according to Sumo Reference, he is the first Maegashira 15 to win a Makuuchi Yusho ever. Now, obviously, this 13-2 is the best tournament he has ever had in Makuuchi and is going to launch him very far up the Banzuke in September. I'm not expecting Sanyaku. Those ranks feel pretty locked in at this point. But yeah, I could see him going as high as Maegashira 2 for September. Now, it feels like Kotoshoho has been around forever, but again, he's only 25. He made his Makuuchi debut when he was 20, after spending only 3 basho in judo. He started his Makuuchi career with 3 consecutive kachikoshi. He made it all the way up to the Joy in January of 2021, and got a 2 and 13. There was talk of an injury, and then the very next tournament, he went Kyujo, which of course dropped him all the way back down to judo. In fact, Kotoshoho's injury woes have sent him on 3 separate tours of judo, but returning each time with a judo yusho, making him one of the very few wrestlers to have 3 judo yusho on his resume. And speaking of Kyujo, quick sidebar. So we've had, what, 10 Kyujo in the July basho just in the Sekitori ranks, and there's been a lot of speculation as to why. Some just say it's the heat. Like the high-tuned machine that is a sumo wrestler will break down in the hot weather sometimes, and that's just the way it happens. Some people have said that the lack of a June tour, it means that the wrestlers will be less fit because they have less structure into their training. But our new champion seems to have spent most of his June break actually taking a break, recovering from injuries. Contrast this to the number of wrestlers, including Yokozuna Onosato and Sekiwake Daisho, who were injured in the final week of training, pushing themselves at the hottest time in the sumo calendar. So once again on this channel, I will posit that perhaps a few more well-placed moments of rest would be ultimately beneficial for the overall performance of a Rikishi. And maybe, just maybe, there is not a hard correlation between total hours trained and ultimate basho success. Come on, there's no tour, take a load off, hard binge Cobra Kai. Take a couple days for yourself, huh? Now, obviously, this is a fine line. Obviously, 0 training would not work, and I know that for a fact, as that is an experiment I've been performing on myself for roughly the past 46 years. But I do think there can be a greater balance in the sumo world between the hard training and the amount of recovery time, because I personally would rather see these wrestlers peaking when the matches actually count. Quick sidebar. So historically, the major injury issue for Kotoshoho has been the right ankle, and frankly, when I saw Kotoshoho on day 1 with that right thigh wrap, I'm like, oh god, the injury's working its way up the chain. But he seemed very, very healthy this tournament. I mean, honestly, this reminded me a bit of Tokushodyo's Yusho. It was very, very unexpected from a low Maegashira who had been in Makuuchi for a while, heavily peppered with low Maegashira victories. But as I said back when Tokushoryu won his Yusho, and I will say again here, you can only beat the people they put in front of you. Although with Omni Kyujo, you think maybe they could have aggressively promoted him a little bit sooner? But it's not like Kotoshoho was the one controlling the schedule, and he ended up closing very, very strong with a 10-match winning streak, ending with 4 dominating victories over contender Aonishiki, Komusubi Takayasu, Sekiwake Kirishima, and a Kinboshi over our new Yokozuna Onosato. Yeah, he got 13 wins in a tournament where the next best got 11, so I think, yes, Kotoshoho was the best wrestler on the Dohyo this July. Congrats! And as for our Shin Yokozuna Onosato, as predicted, he did not win his 3rd tournament in a row. It is very, very hard to win 3 basho in a row, especially when it is your Yokozuna debut. And for some reason, Onosato does not seem to do that well in Nagoya. Well, he seems to do not well for him. He still finished with an 11-4, people. And if there's one recurring pattern it seems we can glean from Onosato's reasonably short career at this point, is that he seems to bounce back very well from subpar performances. So I'm expecting the full Onosato experience coming in September. Now, as I mentioned, Hoshoryu and Daisho ended up going Kyujo, but the rest of the Sanyaku seem to be doing pretty solid, if not necessarily spectacular, in July. Ozeki Kotazakada got his 3rd consecutive 8-7 record. Now, I'm not entirely sure how long he can keep walking the 8-7 tightrope. And while he's definitely looked better, I mean, at least at this point, he's not looking worse. Sekiwake Wakatakakage ended up having a rough first week, but finished very strong, only losing to Onosato in week 2 to end with a 10-5, thus continuing his Ozeki run into September. I had hoped he was going to be able to sort of like put it away this time, but 10-5, close, but no cigar. So right now this puts him at 22 wins over his last 2 basho. So mathematically, to get to the 33 standard, that's not really a standard, check it out, that would be 11 wins in September to ensure promotion. But as we've seen, that can be a little flexible. I would be willing to say he will definitely need at least 10. And Sekiwake Kirishima has kept up his very consistent inconsistency, once again following up double-digit wins with another 8-7. Now, the reports for this one seem to be not injury, but illness, so that makes me a little bit more optimistic that he'll be able to bounce back very strong in September. But this hasn't killed his Ozeki hopes for September, but it does mean that it's going to have to be a very, very dominating tournament in September. At least 13, possibly 14 wins to get him promotion consideration. And as we've mentioned before, 13-2 is something Kirishima has only done once before. And I was very, very happy to be wrong about Komusubi Takayasu. He only had a 6-9 in the last tournament, somehow held rank, but came back this time with a 10-5 tournament up in the Sanyaku. A really, really solid tournament, and it's just so good to see a reasonably healthy Takayasu at the top of the Banzuke. Now, precedent tells me that 10 wins is not going to be enough for him to get promoted to like an extra Sekiwake slot. 11 seems to be that magic number that gets you to force an extra Sekiwake slot. But yeah, I think this will sort of even out the Banzuke luck he got last tournament, getting historically under-demoted with a 6-9 from Komusubi, only being demoted a half rank. So getting a 10-5 and only getting promoted a half rank seems fair, no? And Komusubi Oshoma did not do very well. Yes, the top man at the Naruto stable made his Sanyaku debut and got a 3-12. I don't think anything's wrong with Oshoma. I just think, frankly, he's outclassed. He's a 28-year-old Rikishi in the middle of his peak who had a lot of Banzuke luck to get up to the Sanyaku in the first place. So he will be tumbling back down into mid-Maegashira, and I believe his Komusubi spot will be taken by Aonishiki. And speaking of which, it's time for Uncle Sumo's Attaboys. Of course, Uncle Sumo's Attaboy is a recurring segment where we shine the spotlight on a few wrestlers who maybe didn't get all the press and the shiny bangles. Although in this case, we're talking about Aonishiki, and man, did he clean up in this tournament. He ended with his 3rd consecutive 11-4 record in Makuuchi, his first Junyusho, his first Ginosho Technique Prize, and his first Kimboshi. And as I said, he is going to make Sanyaku for the first time in September. This makes Aonishiki the fastest rise to the Sanyaku, starting all the way from the bottom of the Banzuke, with only 12 basho. I believe this breaks the record co-held by Konishiki and Asashoryu of 14 basho from Maizumo to the Sanyaku. Oh, and yeah, he's only 21 and just started his very first Ozeki run. Well, 2 more 11-4s ought to do it. Attaboy! Maegashira 4 Tamawashi ended up getting an 11-4, sharing the Junyusho, his second, and getting his third Shukunsho Outstanding Performance Prize. And in addition to all of his other age and consistency-based records, he has now added several more, being now the oldest wrestler to ever get a special prize and the oldest wrestler to get a Kinboshi, his 8th, now making him the current active leader in Kinboshi. And if I did my math right, if he gets a Kachikoshi in September or later, he will be the oldest wrestler to get a Makauchi Kachikoshi ever. Legend. Attaboy. Maegashira 10 Atami Fuji got an 11-4 and his third Junyusho. This makes me very, very happy. I had been getting off the Atami Fuji train for a little bit, and I'm not fully back on, but this is an excellent step in the right direction. This is his best tournament since November of 2023, and he ended up beating, admittedly not 100%, Ozaki Kotazakura. Now, I hope this means the hip is feeling better. I'm not entirely optimistic about Atami Fuji's long-term prospects, but man, was it really good to see him on top of the leaderboard again. Attaboy. Maegashira 14 Kusano, also with the share of the Junyusho and our second consecutive Isegahama stable Attaboy. He also got a Ginosho Technique Prize and Kantosho Fighting Spirit Prize in this, his Makauchi debut, and managed to get second week upset wins over Kirishima and Aonishiki. An amazing debut. I cannot wait to see what Kusano's ceiling is. Attaboy. And our other Maegashira 14, the former Waka Ikari and current Fujino Kawa, got a 10-5 in his Makauchi debut, also earning a Kantosho Fighting Spirit Prize. Yeah, Makauchi debut, Kantosho, double-digit wins, and he's the youngest Sekitori. What do you want from me? Attaboy. Maegashira 16 Mitakeyumi ends with a 10-5. Ooh, this is another one that's good for the soul. Mitakeyumi hasn't had the most storied career since, of course, he ended up winning his third Yusho and made Ozeki, and then immediately lost the rank after 3 basho. It's excellent to see a relatively healthy Mitakeyumi. Hopefully this means a few more years up in Makauchi, and I hope to see this relative health continue. Maegashira 2 Abe and Maegashira 8 Ichi Yamamoto. Let's hear it for the tall boys with 9-6 records. Now, I know Abe has not gotten the best press in this tournament, especially with the sheer number of henka and sort of squidgy techniques he's been throwing in there, but he has been coming off of some elbow trouble, and if you're at all familiar with Abe's style of sumo, elbows are kind of his whole vibe. So yeah, I'm not going to punish him too much for wanting to do a few henkas to try to stay up in the Sanyaku. But yeah, a 9-6 at Maegashira 2 along with his 5th Kinboshi is definitely worthy of praise. And have we noticed that Abe has sort of owned Hoshoryu for the past year or so? Yeah, weird. But yeah, Abe, attaboy. Now, Ichi Yamamoto, of course, had an amazing first week, was on the leaderboard for like the first 10 days, then got aggressively promoted near the end and lost his last 5 matches. Unable to sort of close in the same way Kotoshoho did. But still, a 9-6 was his best tournament since November 2023. So, Ichi Yamamoto, attaboy. And our final attaboy, Maegashira 4 Hakuoho. Yes, our third Isegahama attaboy. Now, I don't normally give an attaboy for an 8 and 7, but this seems like a special case. Now, in the preview, I mentioned that the question with Hakuoho was, how is he going to do with 15 days up against the best possible opponents? And well, it seems he can hold his own, but if we look at his pattern of losses, it looks like he is very vulnerable to the large pusher thrusters. Although, weirdly, he is 2-0 against Abe. But nevertheless, this 21-year-old phenom has survived his first prolonged contact with the Sanyaku Enjoy and ended up with a winning record. Attaboy. And now it's time for Worried, a recurring segment where we look at wrestlers who didn't have their best basho, and whether or not we are worried about their future prospects. Starting off, I am not worried about Yokozuna Onosato. Let us all calm down, people. Yes, he did in fact set the record for most kinboshi given up by a new Yokozuna with 4, but that is in fact not the record for most kinboshi given up in a full tournament. That record is co-held by Musashi Maru, who did it back in 2001, and Onosato's Oyakata, the former Kisanosato, who achieved that feat back in November of 2017. And if we do look at an 11-4 where he lost to 4 Maegashira, this does prove that he did in fact beat every Sanyaku opponent he faced. So, unless I hear about like a hidden injury that we haven't heard about yet, an 11-4 is pretty darn good, and if that's your floor going forward for the next few years, I am not worried. I'm also not worried about Yokozuna Hoshoryu, although it did turn out that that big toe injury was hurting him a little more than he was letting on. Now, he did go 0-3 to Maegashira before going Kyujo, but this is an injury that seems to be in a different location than his other injuries, so I'm not too worried about it being anything chronic, and he does have the Yokozuna prerogative to sit out for a few tournaments and fully recover. And again, Hoshoryu is only 26, and if we look at his last 3 healthy basho, they are 3 of his best ever basho. So yeah, even if this injury lingers, I'm also expecting them to give him a bit of a leash on the Kyujo aspect being a Yokozuna. So overall, I'm not worried right now about Hoshoryu. I'm not worried about Sekiwake Daisho, and this is more of a I'm not worried yet. So he had a relatively severe calf injury, but that is a soft tissue injury, which I think has a better potential for full recovery than something like a ligament or tendon tear. He's most likely going to drop down from Sekiwake to double-digit Maegashira, which hopefully will be a bit more of a pillowy group of opposition to allow him to bounce his way back up. So even if he is not fully recovered by September, hopefully he is mostly recovered by September and works his way back up to the Joy Sanyaku region by early next year. Not worried yet. And also, I'm not worried about Maegashira 2 Oho. Now, I know a 7-8 isn't what we were necessarily looking for, but let's look at the overall picture. He's holding his own in the Joy at 25, and I think once a couple of the graybeards, or at least the people who are older him and the Sanyaku, start aging their way out, I could see him sliding up into that sort of Sanyaku regular position, much like Daisho did. I mean, Daisho was a talented pusher-thruster who didn't quite have his legs under him at 25, but later in his 20s ended up becoming Sanyaku regular. I mean, it may be a bit of a reach, but I mean, what was Daisho doing when he was 25 and a half? Oh yeah, he was getting a 7-8 at Maegashira 2. So, for the moment, I don't think Oho is quite done yet. Not worried. I am worried about Maegashira 1 Wakamoto Haru. Yeah, he's only gotten 1 Kachikoshi this year, and he turns 32 in October. And with the relatively new young hotness coming up, like Kusano, Aonishiki, we're going to see how Kotoshoho ends up reacting to this. This plus what seems to be a resurgently healthy Takayasu. Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that we see Wakamoto Haru back up in the Sanyaku ever. I'm also worried about Maegashira 6 Takeru Fuji. We have another serious injury for him, and it seems like this is becoming a bit of a trend. And unlike Hoshoryu, who we were just talking about, Takeru Fuji has not proven himself consistently against the top rankers, and he does not have the Yokozuna privilege to sit out tournaments without losing rank. I am hoping for a full recovery and a recapture of some of the magic he had when he was winning a Yusho in his Makuuchi debut, but as of right now, I am worried about Takeru Fuji's future. Now let's see who's taking that midnight train to Judio. Now, as I said, I think it's going to be very unlikely that we have 3 Sekiwake in September, so I imagine that Daisho's demotion is going to reopen up the Maegashira 18 East rank, which I think is going to be important. Right now I see there being anywhere between 4 and 6 promotion demotions from Makuuchi to Judio and back again. Heading down, we have Maegashira 15 Hideno Umi, who of course had a partial Kyujo and only got 2 wins. Maegashira 16 Kaio with only 4 wins. Maegashira 9 Chiyoshoma was clearly injured but did not go Kyujo, but yet again only got 1 win. Maegashira 7 Endo got 0 wins going completely Kyujo from day 1, and brother of the Yusho winner, Maegashira 17 Kotoeho with 6 wins, I believe is worthy of demotion. Now this takes us to sort of a maybe. Maegashira 17 West, Shishi, got a 7 and 8, which normally would mean he's going to get demoted down to Judio, but as I just mentioned, there will likely be a Maegashira 18 East slot for him to slide right into, so I'm not entirely sure that he's going to drop all the way to Judio. So the issue is, I think there are 5 wrestlers who are mathematically worthy of demotion from Makuuchi. Right now I only see 4 wrestlers who are mathematically worthy of promotion from Judio, with a couple of edge cases. Definitely heading up, Juryo 2 Shonen no Umi with 10, Juryo 1 East Nishikigi with 8, Juryo 2 West Tomokaze with 9, and Juryo 1 West Ryuden with 8. Now we could get very ticky-tacky and say that an 8 and 7 from like Juryo 1 West could only mean like a half rank up, but with the number of demotions we're going to have, I think Ryuden is pretty much a lock for promotion. So this takes us down to the borderline Juryo promotion cases, where we have two 10 and 5s done at Juryo 6. Now normally, a 10 and 5 at Juryo 6 would promote you up to around Juryo 1, so it's a borderline case for promotion, but there is precedent for a 10 and 5 from Juryo 6 being promoted to Makuuchi. And those Juryo 6 wrestlers are Juryo 6 East Hitoshi and Juryo 6 West Dai Seizan, both with 10 and 5. So I'm going to split the difference. I think we are going to have a 5 up, 5 down in September, with Shishi being saved by the Maegashira 18 rank, and Hitoshi coming up to replace Kotoshoho on the Makuuchi Banzuke. Now, to be 100% fair, I did predict amazing things for Kotoshoho. I just predicted them back in 2020, when he was 20. But I don't think I'm alone in saying that this Yusho has been a gigantic surprise in a year that up until now has been largely defined by the wrestlers at the top of the ranks. And I believe this was a legitimately impressive Yusho from Kotoshoho, ending with one of the best second weeks I have ever seen in Makuuchi. And keep in mind that his 2 losses weren't necessarily pushovers. One of them was a resurgent Matakeyumi, who, may I remind you, is a former Ozeki and former 3-time champion, and his other loss came to Fujinokawa, a Juryo phenom he had never faced who ended up getting double-digit wins in his own right. Now, I do think that this basho can only be seen as a slight step back for a Sanyaku that until very recently was like very rock solid, I think. But Kyujo can strike any wrestler, no matter how young or invincible they seem. And unlike previous years, the Sanyaku seems to be a little bit light on the old grizzled vets who could sort of show the youngsters the way to go, especially at the very, very top ranks. Remember, none of our Ozeki or Yokozuna have ever faced Hakuho. And while Terunofuji was dominant, he was hardly the picture of perfect attendance. In fact, the grizzled veteran leadership we had this tournament seemed to come from the Maegashira ranks, guys like Tamawashi, Matakeyumi, and even Shodai, and it did not come from the 3 Sekiwake we expected could possibly be Ozeki in September. Now, I thought that 2025 was going to be a return to the days of multiple Yokozuna, which is true, and also a return to the days of a very top-heavy Banzuke. I was not expecting any Maegashira Yusho this year. And in fact, the number of Maegashira Yusho has gone down in the past few years. Kotoshoho is only the second one we've had since 2023, the other one being Takeru Fuji. And only time will tell if this Yusho will kick off a possible Ozeki run for Kotoshoho, as the Maegashira Yusho did for guys like Asanoyama and Tochinoshin. Or when we look back at this Yusho, will it be more of a Tokushodu surprise, a moment of immortality in an otherwise unremarkable Makuuchi career? Much depends on the soundness of Kotoshoho's right ankle. And from personal experience, but I have to believe, especially in sumo, chronic injuries don't tend to go away. As you age, you just tend to build more of them, and they tend to become handicaps that you manage as you move forward with your career. So yes, only time will tell if Kotoshoho, and indeed wrestlers like Atami Fuji and Takeru Fuji, can bounce back and stay healthy. But I really, really hope they do. Does this basho change my view for the rest of the year? Not really. I'm still expecting at least one more Yokozuna Yusho this year, and I am expecting Makuuchi to keep getting younger for the near-term future, Tamawashi accepted. And as I've hypothesized before, the fact that wrestlers are staying longer and longer in the Makuuchi ranks before retiring, and the fact that more and more young wrestlers are taking the university road to pro sumo, this shows that the youngsters who do break through are going to be even better and more battle-tested than the generations who came before. And speaking of tested, there is indeed some thunder on the horizon. His name's Aonishiki. He's the fastest ever to the Sanyaku from the bottom of sumo. He is on a plausible Ozeki run in his 3rd Makuuchi tournament, and he's only 21. I mean, honestly, ask yourself, who has a better chance of being an Ozeki at the beginning of 2026, Aonishiki or Kotozakada? And in this basho, where we had one Yokozuna underachieving and the other one hurt, this seemed to be a basho that was like ripe for one of the veteran sekiwake, all looking for Ozeki to step up and claim their moment. But in fact, the wrestlers who made the biggest impression were some of our youngest and some of our oldest in Makauchi. Are wrestlers like Daisho and Takayasu and the Waka brothers about to be eclipsed by the wave of young hotness coming in? Kusano, Fujinokawa, and yes, Kotoshoho, and let us not forget Onosato, all who are 25 or younger. And so the sumo world must repeat the same question asked by the Smiths back in 1985. How soon is now? Thank you so much for joining us here on the Dohyo. Please, if you have not, like, subscribe, comment. Interacting with the Dohyo is the only way YouTube understands love, and you want YouTube to get a little bit of love, don't you? And thank you again to all the patrons. Please hit me up if you have not received all of the perks. I want to make this right by you. And also, if you have a little bit of change rolling around in your pockets, please consider becoming a patron. It does help the channel, and the more you support, the more episodes of the Dohyo there will be. Stay tuned to the channel. I have a surprise quick strike coming up. There's going to be the members-only Hagakioi. I am working on the Yokozuna Kyujo episode, but our Yokozunas keep going Kyujo, and the numbers keep changing, so I really need to just get on graph production for that. But stay tuned to the channel. You are not going to want to miss any of that and any of our amazing upcoming September coverage. So, everyone, stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.